The massive hull of the Terran colonial expedition ship Perseverance groaned as another piece of debris struck its damaged outer shell. Commander Kim Hanna pressed her palm against the cold viewport, watching the final coalition evacuation vessels disappear into the star-speckled darkness. Their blue hyperspace trails faded like dying embers, taking with them any hope of rescue. "They're really gone," whispered Lee Doyan from his communications station. His fingers trembled as they moved across the control panels, trying to boost what little power remained in their emergency systems. Static filled the bridge speakers. Punctuated by the distant hum of failing machinery, Kim Hanna turned away from the viewport, her jaw set with determination despite the hopelessness of their situation. Behind her, the Kepler 442 system's twin suns cast an orange glow across the bridge, highlighting the scorch marks and blown circuits that covered nearly every surface. The Vorthan attack had been swift and merciless, designed not to destroy, but to cripple and humiliate. "Status report," she commanded, though she already knew the answers would be grim. "Hull breaches on decks 7 through 12, reported Chief Engineer Choi Yemin, his voice crackling through the damaged comm system. "Life support is running on backup power, but we have maybe 6 hours before the air recyclers fail completely. The reactor core is offline, and I don't have the parts to fix it." In the medical bay 3 decks below, Dr. Park Meena worked by the light of emergency strips, treating burns and radiation exposure among the colonists. Wounded filled every available bed and sprawled across the floor on makeshift stretchers. She moved between them with practiced efficiency, knowing that many would not survive the next few days without proper medical equipment. "Commander," Lee Doyan called out, adjusting his headset. "I'm picking up Vorthan patrol signals along the system's edge. They're making sure nobody comes back for us." Kim Hanna nodded grimly. The Vorthan Empire had given the Galactic Coalition a simple choice: abandon the Kepler 442 system with its rich deposits of rare minerals, or watch their newest member species be wiped out. The Coalition had debated for all of 30 minutes before ordering the evacuation of their own forces, leaving the human colonists to face their fate alone. The commander made her way through the ship's damaged corridors, stepping over twisted metal and sparking cables. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows on the walls, and the air tasted of smoke and ozone. Families huddled together in the larger compartments, their faces pale with fear and uncertainty. Children clung to their parents, too young to understand why the friendly aliens who had welcomed them to the galaxy had suddenly turned their backs. "We need to get everyone to the surface," Kim Hanna announced over the ship's failing intercom system. "Gather only essential supplies, food, medical equipment, tools, and warm clothing. We abandon ship in 2 hours." The evacuation proceeded with military precision despite the chaos. Colonists loaded hover sleds with supplies, while engineers rigged portable power cells to run basic life support equipment. The planet below offered caves and underground caverns that could provide shelter, but the surface was harsh and unforgiving. As the last group prepared to leave the ship, Lee Doyon remained at his station, fingers dancing across the communications array. "I'm sending a message toward Earth," he explained when Kim Hanna approached. "Long range, tight beam transmission. If anyone's listening, they'll know what happened here." "Earth is still recovering from its own problems," the commander replied softly. "They might not even receive it for months." "Maybe," Lee Doyan said, his voice filled with quiet determination. "But they need to know that the Coalition left us to die. They need to know that when humanity asked for help, the galaxy turned away." The message beacon launched just as the ship's power died completely. Its small fusion battery would carry humanity's final words across the void, a desperate plea cast into the darkness between stars. Whether anyone would hear it, whether anyone would care enough to respond, remained unknown. Below on the planet's surface, the survivors established their first camp in a network of caves that offered protection from the harsh winds and radiation. Chief Engineer Choi Yemen worked with salvaged equipment to create basic heating and air filtration systems. Dr. Park Monet set up a medical station in the largest cavern. Her supplies already running dangerously low, Kim Hanna stood at the cave entrance, looking up at the alien stars that had once seemed so welcoming. The Galactic Coalition had promised humanity a place among the civilized species of the galaxy. It spoken of cooperation, mutual aid, and shared prosperity. Those promises now seemed as cold and distant as the stars themselves. The Vorthen. Patrols continued their silent vigil at the system's edge, ensuring that no rescue mission could reach the stranded humans. They had made their point clearly. Humanity was expendable, useful only as long as they served the interests of more powerful species. But in the darkness between worlds, a small beacon carried its message toward Earth, toward the homeworld that had birthed a species too stubborn to die quietly in the void. The deep caves of Kepler 44 to be had become humanity's tomb. 50,000 souls still drew breath in its shadowy depths. Dr. Song Tae-young wiped sweat from his forehead as he adjusted the salvaged atmospheric processor for the third time that morning. The machine wheezed and rattled, held together by spare parts and desperate hope. "How much longer can it run?" asked Yoon Minji, her voice echoing off the cave walls. She carried a tablet listing the day's deaths. 12 more had succumbed to radiation sickness during the night. The numbers grew larger each week. "Maybe 2 days before the filters need replacing again," Song Tae-young replied, his hands black with grease and desperation. "The mining equipment wasn't designed for this. We're pushing it beyond all limits." 3 months had passed since the coalition's abandonment. What had started as an organized evacuation had become a struggle for basic survival. The cave stretched 4 kilometers beneath the planet's surface, offering protection from the deadly radiation that bathed the world above, but protection came at a price. They lived now like moles, scurrying through tunnels lit only by failing power cells. Yoonmingi made her way through the main settlement, checking on families huddled around makeshift heaters. The caves maintained a constant temperature just above freezing, but humidity made everything damp and miserable. Clothes never dried completely, and the smell of unwashed bodies mixed with mechanical lubricants and recycled air. "Mrs. Han, how is little Jisoo today?" she asked, kneeling beside a woman holding a pale infant. "Still not eating properly," the mother whispered. "The formula. It's not the same as what we had on the ship. The children are all getting sick." The deepest parts of the cave system, Kong Seokmin prepared for another surface expedition. His team wore patched radiation suits held together with industrial tape and prayer. The Geiger counters clicked constantly, measuring danger in numbers. That would have terrified them months ago, but now seemed routine. "Remember, we need power cells first, then medical supplies, then food processors," he briefed his volunteers. "Stay together and don't spend more than 2 hours topside. The radiation up there will cook us if we linger." Above ground, the wreckage of the Perseverance lay scattered across several square kilometers. Each expedition brought back precious salvage, a working computer terminal here, a case of emergency rations there, sometimes even intact equipment that could be repurposed for their underground city. But the radiation levels grew worse each week as the ship's damaged reactor continued its slow meltdown. Dr. Park Mina worked in the medical cavern with equipment that belonged in a museum rather than a modern hospital. She had lost weight like everyone else, her cheeks hollow and eyes sunken from months of inadequate nutrition. The antibiotics had run out weeks ago, and simple infections now became death sentences. "We lost another 3 today," she reported to Commander Kim Hanna during their evening briefing. 2 from radiation poisoning, 1 from pneumonia. The children are especially vulnerable. Their immune systems can't handle the stress. Kim Hanna nodded grimly. She had aged years in these months, her hair now streaked with premature gray. Leadership in this place meant deciding who got the last medical supplies, who could risk another surface mission, who deserved the larger food rations. Every choice carried the weight of lives. "What about the pregnancies?" the commander asked. "For women are due within the next month," Park Mina replied. "But I don't know if the babies will survive. The radiation exposure, the poor nutrition, the stress, everything is working against us." The children's section of the cave's youngsters, who had never seen sunlight, played games with rocks and scraps of metal. They spoke in whispers, having learned that loud noises meant danger in their underground world. Some had been born here in the darkness, their first cries echoing off stone walls instead of under open sky. Lee Do-yeon maintained their communications equipment in a small alcove. listening to static and hoping for signals that never came. His jury-rigged antenna system reached the surface through a carefully concealed shaft. But all he heard were Vorthon patrol transmissions. The aliens continued their blockade, ensuring that no rescue could reach the planet. "Anything today?" asked Song Taeyun, stopping by the communications post. "Just the usual Vorthon chatter," Lee Doyon replied, adjusting his headphones. "They're still out there, making sure we stay buried. But on this particular evening, something changed. The long-range sensors cobbled together from ship components, and mining scanners detected massive energy signatures at the edge of the system." Lee Doyon stared at his screens, not believing what he saw. "Commander," called out, his voice carrying through the tunnels. "You need to see this." Kim Hannah hurried to the communications station, followed by other survivors who had heard the excitement in his voice. The sensor display showed multiple large objects dropping out of hyperspace near the system's outer planets. 12 contacts, Lee Doyon reported, his hands shaking as he fine-tuned the sensors. Big ones. Dreadnought class, maybe larger. Coalition. Ships. Someone whispered hopefully. Lee Doyon shook his head, studying the energy signatures. "No, ... these readings are different. The drive signatures don't match any coalition vessel in our database." Most of the survivors dismissed it as equipment failure or sensor ghosts. After months of disappointment, hope had become a luxury they could not afford. But deep in the caves, few dared to wonder if someone had finally heard their desperate message cast into the void. The darkness of space, around Kepler 442, suddenly blazed with the fury of 12 suns as the Seoul Expeditionary Fleet tore through. Hyperspace like avenging angels. Admiral Lim Soo-yoon stood on the bridge of the flagship Busan, watching the tactical displays update as his ships took formation. These were not the desperate, outdated vessels that had carried humanity's first colonial expeditions. These were weapons of war, forged in the fires of Earth's unification conflicts. "All ships report ready, Admiral," announced Captain Han Ji-ho, from the lead dreadnought Incheon. His voice carried across the fleet's communication network with crisp, military precision. Quantum armor at full power, antimatter torpedoes loaded and armed. Lim Soo-yoon activated the fleet-wide broadcast system, his words carrying across every frequency used by galactic civilizations. "This is Admiral Lim Soo-yoon of the Seoul Expeditionary Fleet. We have come for our people. Any vessel interfering with this rescue operation will be considered hostile." The 12 ships of Earth's fleet were monsters compared to the colony vessels that had left Seoul years earlier. The Incheon stretched nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull covered in the distinctive blue-black sheen of quantum armor. Plating, weapon ports lined its sides like the eyes of some ancient sea beast, each housing antimatter torpedoes capable of cracking a moon in half. Behind the Incheon came her sister ships, each bearing the name of a famous Earth battle: Stalingrad, Normandy, Gettysburg, Thermopylae. They moved with predatory grace, their AI-integrated navigation systems coordinating movements with mathematical precision. These were the ships that had ended Earth's civil wars, vessels designed by people who understood that sometimes peace could only be won through overwhelming force. Colonel Naim Hyerim reviewed her assault plans from the Marine Command Center aboard the Seoul. Her soldiers were different from the peacekeeping forces that had accompanied the original colony ships. These men and women had fought in the brutal urban warfare of Earth's unification, where cities became battlegrounds and survival meant adapting to any environment. They wore powered armor that could operate in vacuum or atmosphere, and their weapons could punch through any known defense system. "Marines, this is Colonel Nam," she broadcast to her assault teams. "We have 50,000 civilians trapped on that planet below. The enemy has had months to prepare, but they don't know what Earth has become. Show them." The Vorthon patrol fleet had been caught completely off guard. Their elegant ships, designed more for show than serious combat, moved to intercept the human vessels with formations that looked impressive but lacked tactical sense. Commander Vexelar, the Vorthon fleet leader, transmitted his demands in the condescending tone his species used when addressing lesser beings. "Unknown human vessels. You are trespassing in Vorthan territory. Withdraw immediately, or face the consequences of your primitive aggression. Admiral Lim Su-yoon studied the enemy formation on his tactical display. 18 Vorthan ships arranged in a ceremonial pattern, their energy shields glowing with soft purple light. They had stopped advancing, clearly expecting the humans to retreat like beaten animals. The admiral allowed himself a cold smile. "Captain Han, what is the effective range of our primary weapons?" he asked. "Antimatter torpedoes can achieve target lock at 200,000 kilometers." Sir Han Ji-ho replied from the engine. "The enemy shields are designed to deflect energy weapons, but they won't stop our kinetic penetrators. And let's give them a demonstration of Earth's technological progress. All ships target the lead Vorthan vessel. Fire when ready." The space between the fleets erupted in deadly light as the human dreadnoughts opened fire. Antimatter torpedoes streaked across the void like falling stars, their drives leaving brilliant trails against the darkness. The Vorthan flagship's shields flared desperately, designed to absorb energy beams and plasma bolts. But the human weapons were different, solid matter moving at relativistic speeds. Carrying enough kinetic energy to shatter mountains, the first torpedo punched through the Vorthan shields like paper. Detonating inside the ship's hull, the explosion tore the vessel apart from within, scattering debris across thousands of kilometers. The remaining Vorthan ships scattered in panic, their neat formation dissolving into chaos. "Sir, we're receiving surrender signals from the enemy fleet," reported the communications officer. "Ignore them," Admiral Lim replied coldly. "They had months to show mercy to our civilians. Begin the planetary assault." The human fleet moved into orbit around Kepler for 4 to be with ruthless efficiency. Marine assault shuttles launched from the dreadnoughts, their stealth systems making them nearly invisible as they descended toward the planet's surface. Each shuttle carried soldiers equipped with radiation-resistant gear and weapons designed for tunnel fighting down in the caves. Lee Doyen's communication equipment suddenly crackled to life with a strong, clear signal. A voice speaking in perfect Korean filled the underground chambers, causing survivors to stop what they were doing and listen in amazement. "This is Colonel Nam Hyaram of the Earth's Marine Corps. We are conducting rescue operations on your position. Prepare for immediate evacuation. Earth has not forgotten you." Commander Kim Hannah pressed her hands to her face, tears streaming down her cheeks. Around her, the other survivors began to weep and laugh and embrace each other. After months of abandonment and despair, someone had finally come for them, above their heads. Earth ships took position around the planet like protective guardians, their weapons trained on any Vorthan vessel that dared approach. The message was clear to anyone watching: Earth protected its own, and anyone who threatened human lives would face the full fury of humanity's war machine, the Vorthan. Reinforcement fleet arrived 3 hours after the first skirmish, confident that their overwhelming numbers would drive the primitive humans away. Admiral Keth Moron commanded 67 ships arranged in perfect geometric formations, their hulls gleaming with ceremonial markings that spoke of ancient victories over lesser species. He had crushed rebellions across 12 star systems and expected this engagement to end quickly. "Human vessels, you face the full might of the Vorthan Third Battle Fleet." His transmission echoed across space. "Surrender now, and your deaths will be swift." Commander Oh Sun-woo gripped the controls of the dreadnought Incheon as it accelerated toward the enemy formation. His ship's quantum armor shimmered with barely contained energy, designed to absorb punishment that would vaporize conventional vessels. Behind him, 11 other Earth ships moved in coordinated patterns that looked chaotic to alien eyes, but followed tactical doctrines written in human blood. "All ships execute ramming formation," Admiral Lim ordered from the flagship. "Show them how Earth fights." The Vorthan fleet opened fire with elegant energy beams that painted space in brilliant colors. Their weapons had been perfected over centuries. Designed to overwhelm shields through sustained bombardment at safe distances, purple and gold lances of energy struck the approaching human ships, expecting to see them break apart or retreat. Instead, the quantum armor absorbed the attacks, storing the energy and redirecting it into the ship's own weapon systems. Oh Sun-woo pushed his engines to maximum. power as enemy fire washed over his ship's hull. The Inchin shuddered but held. Together, its armor glowing white-hot from absorbed energy. Distance to target, 8,000 kilometers, and closing, he reported calmly. Lieutenant Chen Ariam worked frantically at the weapons control station, coordinating firing solutions as the ship raced toward point-blank range. Her screens showed targeting data streaming from AI systems that calculated trajectory, enemy movement, and optimal impact points with inhuman precision. Antimatter torpedoes armed and ready. We have lock on the enemy flagship. The human ships struck the Vorthen. Formation like hammers hitting crystal. O Sunwoo's Inchin smashed directly through the center of a Vorthon battlecruiser, its quantum armor protecting the crew as the enemy ship exploded around them. Other Earth vessels followed similar tactics, using their superior armor to survive. Exchanges that would destroy conventional warships. Captain Shin Dong-hae led his fighter squadron through the chaos, piloting sleek interceptors that moved like angry wasps through the battle. His pilots had trained in asteroid fields around Mars, learning to use space debris as weapons. Now they herded chunks of destroyed Vorthen ships into the paths of enemy vessels, turning wreckage into kinetic projectiles. Gold Squadron, target. The cruiser on bearing 27, Shin commanded, rolling his fighter between enemy fire. Use the debris field for cover and hit them from below. The Vorthen commanders found themselves facing tactics they had never encountered. Human ships ignored established rules of space combat, closing to distances where their own weapons could barely function safely. The Earth vessels seemed willing to sacrifice themselves for tactical advantage, a concept that horrified species accustomed to careful, measured warfare. Admiral Kethmorin watched in growing panic as his carefully arranged formations dissolved under human assault. 3 of his heavy cruisers had been rammed and destroyed, while human fighters swarmed around his remaining ships like predators attacking wounded prey. His energy weapons seemed ineffective against the strange human armor in their return. Fire hit with devastating precision. "How are they absorbing our attacks?" he demanded of his tactical officer. "Unknown, Admiral. Their armor appears to convert energy weapons into power for their own systems, and their close-range tactics. They're fighting like savages." The battle reached its climax when the human flagship Busan engaged the Vorthon command ship in single combat. Admiral Lim brought his vessel alongside the enemy dreadnought, the 2 ships exchanging fire at a range of less than a kilometer. Antimatter explosions lit the space between them as both vessels poured everything they had into the exchange. Lieutenant Chen Ariam coordinated the Bison's weapons as it slugged it out with the Vorthen flagship. Her targeting computers tracked every weakness in the enemy's armor, directing fire into damaged sections until the alien vessel began to break apart. "Their main reactor is destabilizing," she reported. "Recommend immediate withdrawal." "Negative," Admiral Lim replied coldly. "Maintain firing until target is destroyed." The Vorthen flagship exploded in a ball of superheated plasma, taking Admiral Kethmorin and his crew with it. The destruction of their command ship broke the remaining Vorthen resistance, and surrender signals began flooding the communication channels. Captain Shin Dong-hae regrouped his fighters to hunt down fleeing enemy vessels. His pilots showed no mercy, having seen the recordings of human civilians abandoned to die in the caves below. Each Vorthen ship that tried to escape found itself swarmed by human interceptors until it either surrendered or was destroyed. "This is Admiral Lim Soo-yoon, to all Vorthen vessels," the human commander broadcast. "You will power down your weapons and submit to boarding. Any ship that attempts to flee will be hunted down and destroyed." Within 6 hours, the Battle of Kepler 442 was over. The Vorthen Third Battle Fleet lay in ruins, its survivors trapped in disabled ships or drifting in escape pods. The space around the planet glowed with the debris of destroyed vessels, a testament to humanity's evolved approach to warfare. Commander O. Sunwoo surveyed the battlefield from the bridge of the battered but victorious Inchin. His ship's quantum armor had held, though it would need extensive repairs. Around him, the other human vessels began recovery operations, pulling their own people from damaged ships while ignoring Vorthen. Distress calls. The message had been sent across the galaxy in letters of fire and blood. Earth protected its own. and anyone who threatened human lives would face consequences beyond their imagination. The Great Council Chamber of the Galactic Coalition had never hosted a more uncomfortable gathering. Representatives from dozens of species sat in their curved seats, shifting nervously as Admiral Lim Soo-yoon walked to the central speaking platform. His dress uniform bore no decorations except for one simple ribbon, the Kepler 442 Liberation Medal. Worn by every human who had participated in the rescue mission, the chamber's circular design was meant to suggest equality among all member species. But today it felt more like a tribunal. The Vorthon delegation sat in the farthest section, their few remaining representatives avoiding eye contact with the human admiral. Their empire had lost 3 entire battle fleets in the months following Kepler 442, and their military power was now a shadow of its former strength. Honored delegates, Admiral Lim began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. 6 months ago, this council voted to abandon 50,000 human civilians to certain death. Today, those same civilians are thriving under the protection of Earth's expanding fleet. Ambassador Cho Min-seok watched from the human delegation section, noting which species seemed uncomfortable with the admiral's words. His job would begin after this speech, negotiating new trade agreements and defense pacts from humanity's dramatically improved position. The balance of galactic power had shifted. Everyone in the chamber knew it. On the viewing screens around the chamber, images of New Kepler City appeared. Governor Kim Hanna had transformed the underground survival shelters into a thriving colonial capital. Caves that had once been humanity's tomb now served as the foundation for a fortress world that controlled one of the galaxy's richest mining systems. The humans we rescued have become the core of our expanding colonial network, Admiral Lim continued. They remember what it means to be abandoned by those who claim to be allies. They also remember who came to save them when all hope seemed lost. In another part of the galaxy, General Park Jae-won reviewed reports from the newly established Terran defense zones. Human colonies were spreading rapidly through contested space, each one protected by Earth's growing fleet. The colonies were different now, harder, more militarized. It's designed to be self-sufficient, even under siege conditions. The rescued survivors of Kepler 442 had become something of a legend among human colonists. Their ordeal in the caves had forged them into a tight-knit community that trusted only their own species. Governor Kim Hanna had established training programs where other human settlers learned survival techniques developed during those dark months underground. We have established 17 new colonies in the past 6 months, Admiral Lim announced to the council. Each one is fully defended and capable of independent operation. We no longer require the Coalition's protection, nor do we seek its approval for our expansion. The Altarian delegate raised a tentacle in protest. Admiral, these new colonies are in disputed territories. The Coalition has regulations governing settlement in contested space. Admiral Lim turned toward the speaker with a cold smile. Same regulations that were conveniently ignored when you abandoned our people? We have learned not to rely on coalition law for our protection. Behind the scenes, Ambassador Cho Min-seok had been busy establishing new relationships with species that had shown sympathy for humanity's plight. The Kentauri Federation had quietly offered military cooperation, impressed by Earth's technological advances. Even some former Vorthan client states were seeking human protection as their old patrons weakened. The economic implications were becoming clear throughout the galaxy. Human colonies controlled valuable mining systems and trade routes, but they traded exclusively with Earth's friendly species. The Vorthans found themselves cut off from resources they had relied on for centuries, while species that supported human expansion prospered. Dr. Song Tae-young, now Director of Colonial Development, had used lessons learned during the cave siege to design revolutionary life support systems. Human colonies could survive in environments that would kill other species, making them valuable partners for exploration and development in hostile regions of space. The Coalition's decision 6 months ago has had consequences beyond what you imagined, Admiral Lim stated. You created a precedent that member species can be abandoned when politically convenient. We have taken that lesson to heart. Several delegates began speaking at once, but the Admiral raised his hand for silence. On the viewing screens, new images appeared, human warships patrolling the borders of Earth's expanding territory. The vessels were larger and more advanced than anything the Coalition had seen before. Products of Earth's accelerated military development. Colonel Nam Hyaram, now promoted to general, commanded the Colonial Defense Force from her headquarters. On Kepler 442, her Marines had become legendary throughout human space. Veterans of the cave rescue who trained new soldiers in the harsh realities of survival warfare, they wore the experience of abandonment like armor, making them fiercely loyal to Earth and suspicious of alien promises. We are establishing a new paradigm, Admiral Lim concluded. Humanity will never again depend on others for protection. We will expand where we choose, defend what we claim, and remember both our friends and our enemies. As the Admiral left the speaking platform, quiet conversations erupted throughout the chamber. Species that had supported the abandonment now worried about their own security as human influence grew. Others began calculating the benefits of aligning with Earth's rising power. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson in the caves of Kepler 442. When pushed to the edge of extinction, humanity had not simply survived, they had evolved into something stronger and more dangerous. The coalition that had abandoned them to die now faced a neighbor that would never forget the betrayal, and never again trust their fate to alien mercy. The age of human dependence was over. The age of human expansion had begun.